Welcome, everybody, and happy Wednesday. My name is Mary Arizmendi, and I've been supporting Deborah in thinking all this session through. I want to welcome all to this space today. I'm from Argentina, and I'm part of the Catalyst Now team, the community building and engagement team specifically. I am very excited about this session because there's one thing that I always say about the work that I do, and it's how privileged I am to be working with such passionate and driven people. But there's also another part that I always want to pay more attention to, and is how are the Catalyst Now members, how is this driven and purposeful movement keeping their energy, holding space for each other, and recharging that. So I'm really grateful for Deborah because she understands all the challenges, the struggles, and the opportunities that we have when we can set boundaries better, or when we can reconnect with ourselves, when we can even take a few minutes to pause and rethink and reconnect. So thank you, Deborah, for holding this space for us, for hosting this session and sharing very, very generously all the things that you've learned until this moment in your journey and making us part of that.
Welcome. I'm so happy to be here today, Mary, and it's my privilege and honor to be able to co-host this session with you. And through my Catalyst Now involvement, it's been a pretty short but also very rewarding time, and so very excited to host this event today. And I'm very glad to see all of you people show up. And I hope that you guys are able to take this time and reconnect with yourself because this is what it's meant for. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and start the slides. So today, you've shown up, and we're going to be talking about empowering teams through presence, regulation, and resilience. We're going to look at somatic approaches that you can use to combat burnout and continue with the work that you're doing, whether or not it's in sustainable activism or whether or not it's in some other type of work, but it's deeply meaningful to you, but it's also deeply demanding. So here are some ways that you can continue to sustain yourself and just relax in your seat, like feel your seat supporting you, take in your environment, even as we move through this, just be aware of where you are in your room and how you're occupying your space. Come back to your body. One of the things that I always share with people is that healing starts with awareness and learning to be kind to oneself. This has been true in my own journey of healing. And I always encourage people to think about how they talk to themselves, how they treat themselves, and if they were a third person looking on the outside at their relationship with themselves, how would they feel? Have you been kind to yourself of late? When you work, do you take breaks? And how often do you do the things that light you up from within? And I'm not just talking about work, but I'm talking about the little things that um, you can do to just celebrate life and its little joys. So in this session, I just want to encourage each of you to start thinking about that and consider little ways that you can come back to yourself and embrace all that you are. Okay, so we're going to start with talking about the self. A lot of us have what you call a society of self in us, and we're going to do parts meditation to notice all the different parts of ourselves that sometimes get fragmented, but we want to kind of bring it back to your higher self that brings every other part of yourself into alignment. So it helps us to understand ourselves. The benefit of doing parts where it helps us to understand ourselves, recognize and explore different aspects of oneself. It also helps with integrating. So sometimes we feel a bit conflicted, but doing this can help us to repair those inner conflicts and harmonize from within. It also helps with emotional regulation. So it helps you to develop skills for managing your emotions effectively. It helps with reducing conflict within yourself. And overall, on a nervous system level, it increases your well being through promoting relaxation and reducing stress. Okay, so we're just going to start with some easy breaths in through your nose, hold, and out through your mouth, in through your nose, hold, and out through your mouth, in through your nose, hold, and out through your mouth. And as you continue with your breath, just get comfortable wherever you are. If you're on a chair, feel the seat supporting you. You can lean back into it. Feel your weight being supported by the chair. And as you do so, I just want you to turn your focus internally for a moment. And as you focus your attention internally, I'm going to ask you to focus on any thoughts, feelings, or physical sensations that you notice inside. Again, thoughts, feelings, or physical sensations that you notice inside. And as you notice those, I'm going to see if you can focus your attention on those and see if it's possible to extend some curiosity towards those thoughts, feelings, and sensations. And notice if one of those rises to the surface. Is it louder or stronger, or does it want more attention? And if one does, see if you can get curious about what it's holding for you. This may be something familiar or it may be something new, whatever it is. See if you can get curious about what it wants to share with you. You may notice that other thoughts, feelings, or sensations are jumping in to distract you. Just simply notice like what sensation comes up, whether or not it's um, any tightness in your chest or any heaviness or tingling in any parts of your body, whatever comes up, allow yourself to simply get curious about it. Whatever you're learning here, see if it's possible for you, whatever sensation it is that's coming up and making itself known, see if it's possible to extend some gratitude towards the sensation, even if it's a heaviness, at your back or a tightness in your throat. Notice how these sensations respond to you showing it some gratitude when you do so. And once that feeling of gratitude becomes complete, notice if there's any shift in your body, any shift in sensations. And again, try to thank whatever came up for you. So maybe you're going to make the intention to follow up with that sensation at a later time. And when you're ready, I'm going to ask you to come back to the room. Now, I'm going to ask if any of you could sense that there was a difference in the sensation that you were holding in your body and that sensation that came up after you acknowledged it and extended gratitude towards that sensation. Notice if there was any difference in how you're feeling in your body. Notice any difference in the energy surrounding you right now. So, in doing this exercise, parts meditation, you were able to turn your focus or attention internally, and that makes a difference because different parts of the brain actually get activated differently when we focus our attention internally, as opposed to when you're just focusing your attention externally. So simply notice that difference. And if you can, this is one of the hallmarks of internal family systems, one of the hallmarks of heart's work, which is that when we shift out and focus our attention internally, we're actually activating and focusing parts of the brain that have been literally affected by trauma. Now, as we shift out from parts meditation, I would like each of you to consider what brought you here today and the intentionality behind that. And as we move forward through this session, let's sit with that intentionality and approach each of the following exercises with that intentionality as well. Today, we're going to explore how trauma shows up in your body. It's not just about feeling tired. It's comprises of other things, which we will unpack a little later. And we will also be looking at how breath work works in the middle of chaos. We'll also be exploring micro movements that can reset your system in 30 seconds. And then additionally, we'll also be exploring how setting boundaries can protect your mission instead of sabotaging it. How do you effectively set boundaries when every part of you is saying, no, I have to take this on, I have to get this done, right? Because I think everybody here tends to want to show up with their best self, wants to do everything they can to move on to the next step. But sometimes it's hard to hit that pause button and it's hard to say no. So we're going to be exploring that in boundary setting. So, what is trauma? I think some of us here are a little bit more familiar with it than others, but trauma actually comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes. And PTSD is the most well-known one. So this is can become in the form of core trauma. It can come in the form of something that separates your life into before and after, like a car accident, for example. After a car accident and you sustain some really, bad injuries, your life is forever changed into before and after. It could come in a form of sexual assault. Your life again is split into the before and after scenario. But there are other forms of trauma that transcend PTSD. So that's what you call CPTSD. This the C in this CPTSD stands for complex. So think about complex post-traumatic stress disorder as anything that could have arisen within a relationship, anything that happens over a long period of time. So, for example, if you were in an abusive relationship, whether or not it's an abusive intimate relationship or you were growing up in a home where abusive behaviors were normalized, that can cause CPTSD. So your body adjusts to that kind of environment. It adjusts to what you call trauma bonding and intermittent reinforcement, and it causes all sorts of shifts in your physiology. So your body might have taken on a lot of the stress. So you could have developed things like high blood pressure or irritable bowel syndrome, a lot of gastrointestinal problems. So CPTSD, just for you to remember, it shows up over a longer period of time and often within relationship. It can also show up in people who are living in war-torn areas because this happens over a longer period of time. Secondary trauma or vicarious trauma is something that shows up through you hearing or constantly being exposed to trauma. So among journalists who are covering areas where there's a lot of strife, a lot of unrest, where, let's say, politically it's very fraught, they can experience that on a secondary level. It can also show up amongst first responders or people who are psychological first responders, like therapists, who are constantly exposed to the trauma that exists within marital relationships when it's not working out, for example, you're hearing about all of these problems that troubled couples have on a daily basis. It can have an impact on how you view intimate relationships or just even how you view humanity. Now, we don't talk about this as much, but grief is its own form of trauma. Losing someone you love can be intensely traumatic because actually our brains have adjusted to accommodate for that person. We actually hold that person in our prefrontal cortex. So if you can think about, for example, walking down the supermarket aisle and thinking, hey, you see this product, or you see some kind of fruit or anything in the produce section, and you think, oh, I think this person would love this, right? That's your prefrontal cortex holding almost like a map of the person that you love that reminds you, hey, this person will love this, because you're not just thinking about yourself anymore. Oh, I want to buy this or that. You're thinking about another person that you hold in your heart and mind and even your soul, that this person would love this thing. And so when you lose someone you love, your brain takes a while to catch up with that reality. And you're reminded in ever so many ways that the person is no longer there in the same capacity. You might hold them in your heart and in your spirit, but physically they're no longer there. uh, you wouldn't go and buy, that fruit or that chocolate, for example, for that person that you love anymore. And that is a very difficult adjustment for you to make, in your brain and in your own spirit. So that's its own form of grief as well. That's its own form of trauma. Now we're going to go through this. I created this little exercise for us to practice, on a just a practical level. If you all, I want to invite each of you to just type into the chat, as I go through this line by line, what each of these incidences, what kind of trauma, identify the type of trauma. So the first scenario is where there's a sudden accident and the husband has lost his wife in that accident. What kind of trauma? Yes, grief, definitely. Thank you, Tiffany. And what else could it be as well? Aside from grief, it could also be if you have been through the accident yourself, right? You could have suffered from whiplash. So the husband might be suffering not just from grief, but also from PTSD. He might have flashbacks. He might wake up with nightmares, intrusive thoughts. So these are all symptoms of PTSD. Let's look at the second scenario where a child is experiencing neglect. He's constantly witnessing conflict between his parents who are going through some form of divorce, and also some kind of identity crisis as well, because who does he belong to now that he is torn between both parents, right? You're not no longer in the same camp. What kind of trauma could this embody? You can just type it into the chat again. Invite people to type it into the chat. Yes, thank you, Beth. Like, it is definitely PTSD because it happens within relationship, right? So seeing your parents fight is an intensely painful process, especially for the kid who always just wants his parents to be in harmony. Um, so what the child experience is a form of CPTSD. And then also, if let's say the parent confides in the child about what of some of their troubles that they're going through, the child could also be experiencing vicarious trauma, right? So the child will be carrying a lot more than he or she is equipped at that age, especially when their brains are in a developmental stage. The child will be carrying a lot more than he or she is equipped to carry. So that has a huge impact on the child. Let's look at the third scenario where there's some form of workplace harassment, where the boss is constantly putting the employee down, criticizing. Let's say if it's a male female relationship, it could be the boss making sexual advances on the female. It doesn't even have to be that overt. He could be just making comments and remarks that border on like flirtatiousness, that cause some degree of discomfort, some kind of innuendo, maybe inviting her out for dinners with clients that maybe, go beyond the natural scope of her work. So, what kind of trauma could this be causing? Yeah, so it would be a form of actually CPTSD because it happens within relationship and it happens over a longer period of time. PTSD is something that happens, splits your life more in, is like a really big event that splits your life into before and after, right? So that's how you differentiate between the two. So CPTSD happens often within relationship and it happens over a longer period of time. Now let's look at this situation where there's abuse at home, where there's physical, emotional, and psychological abuse in the home environment. What kind of, yeah, that one is hard. Yeah. Yes, indeed. CPTSD. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Leslie. That's CPTSD. All right. So I think you guys are getting the hang of this. Now let's look at the next scenario where there's a teenager, he's commuting, and then he gets in a car accident and he loses a limb. What kind of trauma is this? Yes, yes, that's wonderful. Grief and PTSD. I love that, Tiffany, you brought up grief because once you lose a limb, you often have to grieve a loss in identity, right? Like they call sometimes the people call it the phantom limb, where you feel like you still have the limb, but actually you don't. So that's also a form of your brain trying to catch up with present reality. Your brain has to make a new map of your body in that process. Okay, let's look at the next two that's left. So a child experiencing bullying in school. What kind of trauma is this? Yes, it's CPTSD more often than not because it doesn't only just have a before and after event. It is usually happening over a longer period of time, and it happens within relationships. So this can be, definitely CPTSD, and it can be compounded with secondary trauma as well. Secondary, it's called re-traumatization when, for example, the child tries to reach out for help, but instead of being believed, they become invalidated. This can also happen if, let's say teachers or the principal themselves are not really responsive or not even trained to know how to deal with bullying or harassment. And then the final one is the therapist being exposed day in and day out to traumatic stories and experiences shared by, yeah, exactly. It can be secondary from the previous incident for people who are witnessing it, bystanders, right? So, moving back to the final scenario where it's the psychotherapist, what kind of trauma is it where they are hearing about it day in and day out? It's secondary trauma. And when you're spending like 8 to 10 hours listening to traumatic material, right, it can really do a number on you. And unless you're taking active steps to insulate yourself and protect yourself so that your worldview doesn't completely become affected by it, it can really have a real impact on you. So I'm just going to talk briefly about this. What is the mind-body connection, right? Um, if we're not clear about what the mind-body connection is, and it might come across to some people as a bit esoteric, a bit woo-woo, as they like to say, but it's actually not esoteric or it's not woo-woo. It is actually science-based. So when you think about the mind-body connection, we're thinking about really what we're talking about is our nervous system, right? So many of us, especially in the Western world, are trained to exist up here in our minds, when actually our bodies are sending us signals all the time, and our bodies are made up of our autonomic nervous system. And I'll go into greater detail about what this is. But as it stands, auto means automatic, right? It stands for automatic. Autonomic implies that these are the automatic this, processes that happen within your nervous system that you don't actually get to control. So Deb Dana, who is a well-known clinician and author and mind-body practitioner as well, states that the autonomic nervous system is the foundation of our lived experiences. So think back to the last time where you heard your body communicating to you in a very visceral way, right? And I see some of you nodding your head like with that knowing look, and that is definitely what it means. And this is what she means when she says that the autonomic nervous system is the foundation of our lived experiences. And I want to draw attention to our nervous system, which is a very, very amazing system for picking up what is happening around us in the world, for helping us to process it, and for sending signals to us from bottom up what we need to do or how we should respond, right? If you think about it, our brain is buried behind a few different layers, and then there's a skull. So there's a lot of processing that happens before we can even be consciously aware of something. So if you have ever heard anybody say, like, the body knows before the mind does, that is a lived reality. It's because our bodies actually are taking in signals immediately in the immediate environment. Think about your sense of touch. Think about your sense of smell. Think about your taste buds, right? And think about just sometimes you step into the room and you can sort of feel if there's tension in that room, right? Without even knowing what's actually happening. That is your body picking up signals. And our nervous systems are actually reading each other nervous systems, right? But we're not taught this in school. We're not, nobody talks about our nervous system, you know, communicating with each other. But actually, even in this moment, my nervous system is communicating through you because you can hear the tone of my voice. And my voice is shaped by how my nervous system is working in the moment. And my facial expression is something that you're picking up, that you have observed, decades worth of facial expressions, and they mean something to you. And so as you look at my face and the way that I'm talking, my gestures, all of that communicates something to you. So we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into our nervous system. It is made out of two main parts, the central as well as the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord, and it receives, integrates, and processes information from your peripheral nervous system. Just now when I was talking about your touch, your sense of touch, your taste buds, your sense of smell, you can, these are all signals that your peripheral nervous system picks up. So your central nervous system receives and interprets and integrates and processes all these information so that you are consciously aware of what's happening. It also is like your dashboard, right? It coordinates and controls the voluntary body activities, and it is involved with decision making and memory. So this is the part of you that is involved with consciousness, conscious thought, and control and decision making. So it's the higher part of yourself. Let's talk about the peripheral nervous system now, the other part of your nervous system, which extends throughout your body and connects the central nervous system to the rest of the body. As mentioned earlier, it transmits sensory and motor signals. So how do we learn about the world? As children, when we're growing up, we learn about space when we start crawling on all fours. We experience the world through movement. That is our first taste of the world. We start to form maps of the world and we move through the world. So the peripheral nervous system connects the central nervous system to the rest of the body, and we learn about the world through moving through it. Now, from the peripheral nervous system, I want to talk about the somatic system, which is the part of you that you get to control. You get to control these movements. So soma means body, but it also refers to the part of you that is up to you to control. So your central dashboard and the central nervous system, it sends a signal to the rest of your body. You get to move and dictate like how you want to move physically. And in the movement, okay, I want you all to just like start shaking a little bit now. Like just stretch out your arms, shake. You are dictating this movement. So this is your soma that is moving and it's actually shifting your state of mind. Even in this little shift of movement, you're experiencing a little mind shift as well because it affects your autonomic nervous system. Remember how I said earlier your autonomic nervous system is the foundation of your lived experience? It is also the part that you can't really control, so to speak. Autonomic means automatic, so you don't get to control it, right? So, but your somatics can actually help to modulate your autonomic nervous system. So on some level, you don't get to control it, but you can help to modulate it. Now, your autonomic nervous system breaks down into sympathetic and parasympathetic. If you think about your nervous system like it's a car, right? The sympathetic is like your gas pedal, so it accelerates. So when there's a lot of things happening, there's a lot of work, you are stepping on that gas pedal. Okay, so you're accelerating up that highway of activity and productivity and information, and you're in that flow of like just stepping on that gas pedal and going up that super highway. Now, your parasympathetic nervous system is the opposite of that gas pedal. It works like a brake pedal, and it is involved with what you call the rest and digest system of your body. So, when you are slowing down, when you are eating food, after eating food, your body needs to be able to digest the food. Or when you are just taking a break, you're on a holiday, you're sitting by the beach, and just like looking at the sunset, your body is in a state of rest and your parasympathetic nervous system is activated. Now, what happens when you are constantly on the go and you're constantly pushing yourself? You're like it's like you're a car with the accelerator floored all the time. And if you can imagine a car with the accelerator floored all the time with no brakes and no tune-ups, no maintenance, your car is going to at some point break down, right? So as much as the gas pedal is important, it's also important to learn how to be able to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. And then also the other thing that you can think about when we talk about dysregulation, does anybody know what dysregulation means here? It's a pretty like um, technical term, but actually being dysregulated simply means not feeling like yourself, feeling disconnected. It can also mean like you feel very activated or stressed. You could be in a state of hyperarousal. So sometimes being dysregulated could look like you're trying to go on gear 4 or 5 in your car, but you're stuck on gear 1. Okay, so your nervous system is not moving in sync with what the situation demands in that moment. And it could be like you wanna hit that accelerator, but you're stalling. And this is called dysregulation, nervous system dysregulation. All right, so I'm gonna move on to the next slide. Trauma has an impact on your relationship with yourself and with others. It's Bessel van der Kolk who wrote the seminal book, The Body Keeps the Score, that trauma victims cannot recover until they become familiar with and befriend the sensations in their bodies. So the exercise that I led earlier, where you the parts work meditation, that was very useful for you to start developing the skill of called interoception, which is actually being aware of what's happening within your body. So being frightened means that you live in a body that's always on guard. So that's the reason why whatever sensation you experience, whether or not it's a tightness in your chest, on your throat, or heaviness in your back, I asked you to welcome it instead of, just ignoring it, right? Because so many of us are taught to ignore these sensations instead of paying attention to it, acknowledging it, and welcoming want to become friends with the sensations that show up in your body, even if they may not necessarily always feel comfortable. And trauma processing helps us to reduce the impact of trauma. If this is the impact of trauma, where you see the yellow part, after you've processed trauma, it's still a part of you, but it doesn't impact your life in the same way anymore. And then all these disconnected parts of yourself, right, that trauma causes becomes integrated. So there is a veritable difference when you have started to process trauma. And processing trauma doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go see a therapist or that you have to do a lot of work. It can just means that you sit with your emotions and you learn how to process them in a way that is not overwhelming, in a way that's safe for you. And as you process trauma, um, this area, which is called our window of tolerance, where there's a sense of safety and connection, it will start to widen over time. So your capacity actually increases, and your ability to deal with uncertainty and stress also increases. You become less reactive, you become more equipped to deal with complex situations or even, deal with ongoing stressful situations without being dragged down by it. So basically your window of tolerance starts to widen and you don't swing into hyperarousal or what you call shut down, which is hypoarousal, as often. So you don't shift into these extreme states as much because your window of tolerance has widened. And we're going to learn some tools that you can use to practical tools that you can use to increase your window of tolerance over time. But before we move into that, I want you to look at what is called trauma-based survival responses, right? So we've heard of fight, flight, and freeze, which are the three buckets on the left, the red, yellow buckets, right? So do you notice yourself in any of these buckets? Some of us tend more towards one bucket than the other. And I would say that if you are somebody that's very driven, you could be in flight, right? You could constantly be working really hard, or you could be very perfectionistic, overly analytical, overthinking things rather than going with the flow. That's where you could be, sometimes in gear two when you should be in gear five, right? Just flowing with the flow, but instead you are, you know, revving up, trying to be sort of like good enough, right? When you're already good enough. Okay, then let's talk about fight. Let's say you grew up in environments where the only way that you could sort of survive was to really escalate things. So this could mean that whenever you experience conflict or any kind of stress, your default is this sort of behavior where there's a lot of aggression or you become very controlling. And remember, the first step is always awareness. The first step to healing always starts with awareness, and noticing what kind of responses you tend to default to is a very powerful way of noticing the patterns in your life and noticing what kind of patterns are no longer working. So freeze could look like indecisiveness, being stuck, being dissociated, feeling numb, isolating, or feeling depressed. And you might say, okay, well, I'm not just one bucket, I'm actually a few different buckets. And that's also fine because you don't need to stick to one bucket, but you just need to know that these are also trauma-based responses, ways of coping that are based on your window of tolerance being very narrow and you just default to whatever you used, to cope in the past, right? So people pleasing is also a form of a trauma-based response. That's not to say it's wrong to sort of accommodate people or try to make people happy. There's nothing wrong with that. But it only becomes a problem when you start to erase your own boundaries and start to sacrifice your peace and sacrifice your sense of self for the sake of others, for the sake of appeasing others. And usually what happens when you're always people pleasing is that you can't please everybody and some people start to get upset with you because you're trying to please other people and so this causes a lot of problems in the long term. Two newer trauma-based responses that have been identified through research in the past number of years, more recent years, is collapse and submit. So collapse and submit can look a bit like freeze, except that it's a bit more extreme in that you don't just numb out or you don't just avoid, but you become hopeless. You have very, very low motivation. You tend to just roll over and submit to others. You have low self-esteem. There's a lack of energy. You feel overwhelmed. And you have a lot of difficulty articulating and expressing your emotions to others. Okay, so that's collapse and submit. And then the final trauma-based response is what they call attach cry for help. So sometimes we tend to look to others to give us a sense of comfort, a sense of co-regulation, right? But if it's excessive, if you're constantly seeking validation, where you constantly need some form of attention, or you even engage in self-harm, and you have a really, really hard time setting boundaries, and you engage in risky behavior and impulsive action, it is a cry for help. We call it cry for help because you're acting out essentially to ask other people to help you, right? You may not know how to say it. I need you to do this. I need this help. You may not know how to articulate or even understand what your own actual needs are. So because you don't know what your actual needs are, you tend to act it out, and it's a subconscious way of seeking help. So that's attached cry for help. Okay, we're gonna do a quick breakout now, about 10 minutes or so. We're gonna split up into groups of four. Yeah, four. Yeah, we're going to, in these groups, share which of the trauma-based responses you tend to default to. You can think back to, the last time, or, maybe some other incident that you feel comfortable sharing about, and just share about how these sorts of responses showed up in that moment, and we can just take turns, and then you know let's create a space that is supportive and that holds space for each other, even as we share some of these vulnerable moments.
Super. Just for
Hi everybody, I hope that
Hi
that little
everybody, welcome
exercise
back.
was yeah, I hope that little exercise was helpful to all of you. We're gonna I'm cognizant of the time. It's 10, and if you need to leave, please by all means go ahead. But there's going to be about like maybe 10, 15 minutes more in this session. So for those of you who want to stay on, please feel free to stay on. We're going to learn some very practical tools for widening that window of tolerance I talked about so that you can break out of these sort of patterns of engagement that are no longer serving you. Okay, so first one in our somatic toolkit is what you call the butterfly hug. Okay, so you can go like that. See these little butterfly fingers here? Yeah, okay. So can imagine like a little butterfly landing on your chest, right? Okay, so it can go like that, alternating. It's a form of sort of bringing yourself back to the present time, but it's also a form of what you call bilateral stimulation, where you're alternately stimulating both sides of your body and your left and right hemisphere in your brain to basically tell you, like, let's say if you're having a bad memory, like something is replaying, like that incident where you had a quarrel with, your brother or your mom or whatever, right? Disagreement. Just play this back, and it's bringing you to the present, and it's telling your hippocampus, the part of your brain that's responsible for memory and storage retrieval, hey, this happened a while ago, and you can store it away now instead of replaying it over and over in your head. Okay, so this is something that you can do. Okay, now next movement is called the arm rub. Okay, everybody ready for this? It's very simple. You just stretch out your arms and you go like that. Yeah. Okay. And you can do this in any number of ways. You can do it like that too. This is called havening. It's a form of also self-soothing, right? And there are other ways that you can go. So put your right hand over your chest and your left hand over your belly. So this is something you can do while lying in bed. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. in through your nose, hold and out through your mouth. There's something you can do to calm down and regulate your nervous system. And then finally, the last one is safe containment. You use your right hand, put it underneath your left armpit, and then your left hand over your right shoulder, and just hold yourself. Can you feel? This is very comforting. Animals like it too, actually, because it's like a form of containment. Yeah. Okay. So these are some tools that you can come back to. They're very simple and they can change your mind state. Okay, we're gonna use the last 10 minutes or so to do what I call boundary work, and Mary and I are going to demonstrate to you what you can do within your groups to exercise boundary work. Okay, so this is really about you. Okay, you just split into groups of three, and pairs of two will take turns asking the other party to do something that is boundary crossing, and the other party has the opportunity to notice how they feel in their body before they respond with a no. So before you even just say straight up no, you can also take that minute to respond, feel how you feel within your body, and then you can come up with different creative ways of saying no. I mean, if you want to just say no, that's okay, but you can also explore how you can creatively say no and experience what that's like in your body even as you say no. Pay attention to how you embody your no in how you express yourself, whether you smile, what signals you want to send even when you say no. And the third person will share observations after two people share their experience, and you can pair up in a different configuration and repeat again. So whoever was observing now gets to be either the recipient of the no or the one that's pushing the boundary. Okay, so Mary, are you ready? Okay,
Ready.
I'm gonna ask Mary something, and so just listen up. Hey Mary, you know what? Do you think you could take a pen and draw a flower on your face? I think it would look really nice on your cheek.
Oh, Deborah, thank you for suggesting that. But I really like my face as it is, and we're recording the session, so I would rather stay with my smile and a clean face.
Okay. So how did that feel for you when you said no? Like when you were like, oh, that's, really
Ooh,
interesting. How did it?
so my heart started beating up super fast. Like, what should I say? That anxiety, or like, should I go with the truth, or should I, say yes? Okay, I'll do even if it's crazy.
Yeah. So you want to experience, you want to clock that in your body. How do you feel in that moment? Take a moment and then pace yourself and then come back with a creative answer. I love how you creatively dealt with that and you were very, very nice, very kind. You could have just said no, but you didn't want to. So you kind of like softened the way that you said it. So let's all like break out into rooms and do this now. I think we can just yeah, split into maybe two groups because I think there are like total like four people in one group and three in another group. So like let's go ahead and do that.
Super.
Oh, three.
Open.
Okay, well, I think you all had a pretty good time like just exercising, going through those exercises. Anybody want to like just quickly type into the chat like what it was like for you? Um, I think it was hard for many of us to say no, right? I think I had to sort of walk people through saying no. Okay, so one of the things that I feel like helps people to slow down and come back to their bodies, especially when they're under pressure, is what I call 5 steps to freedom, right? So when you are, first of all, you want to name the sensation. So when somebody's putting pressure on you to do something, take a minute instead of responding right away to breathe with your body's discomfort so that you can so that you can tune into the signals beneath it. Is your back tense? Is your throat heavy? Your stomach fluttering? And then breathe into those sensations that come up. So, not your shallow chest breathing, but actually breathing into those sensations in through your nose and out through your mouth. And then after that, after you do that, you can name the sensation. Oh, I'm feeling scared. Um, you know, name it rather than rejecting it. So sometimes we get very hard with ourselves. We can say like, oh, I'm um like we can judge our own emotions, right? Like so you might feel I don't know, you might feel sad and then you might judge that and say, oh, I shouldn't be sad, right? But that's not a feeling is just a feeling. It's not who you are. It's just a feeling that comes and goes. And so naming that emotion, accepting it, and realizing maybe what's causing that emotion and acknowledging that is one of the kindest things that you can do. So we move on to compassion. That feeling was valid. And your body is responding in that way, even with the discomfort and sensation, right? Like sometimes your shoulders go up. It's because it's an actual situation that is causing that sort of emotion in you. And so recognizing that, acknowledging that, and accepting it and thanking it, right? Even if in the moment it may not make sense for you to respond that way, but acknowledge that it still has an impact on you. And therefore, your body is responding in a certain way. And then the last step is actually the most important step to complete this whole process. What are your present needs? So when you're feeling like really stressed or you're feeling the sadness, maybe what you need to do when you're feeling really sad, especially if you're grieving someone, is to just lie down in bed and cry. You know, there's so much stigma against tears, and I really say this is very unfortunate because actually tears are help you to regulate your nervous system, and crying always helps to make you feel a little bit more relieved, makes you feel more whole. Like I enjoy a good cry when I can get a good cry in. I'm very thankful because I don't get to cry. I'm not very easy, you know, I don't get cry very well. And so sometimes when I'm able to cry, I feel a lot better. And so I think people need to be more embracing of tears and embracing of the powerful effects of tears, leaving your body because it helps to regulate your nervous system. Yeah, exactly. Erasing stigma against tears. Okay, now I want to leave you out with one final skill. It's very simple skill. It's called half smile willing hands, and it's a distress tolerance skill. So think about that irritating, coworker or that distressing situation that you're stuck in, and then think about how your body tenses up everything you think about it, right? You kind of get into this very tense state. So now instead of being in that tense state, we want to engage another part of your nervous system, and we will share this recording, I think with everybody who registers. So don't worry. We're just going to be closing out the session in a few. So everybody take in one big breath with me. In through your nose, hold, and out through your mouth. In through your nose, hold, and out through your mouth. And one last time, in through your nose, hold, and out through your mouth. Okay, now I want you all to hold out your hands. Okay, this is called willing hands. So it's open palms, willing hands. And then gently allow your face, just gently allow your face, your mouth area to move into a half smile. Do you notice how different your body feels? Is there a shift in your body when you engage in this position? Yeah, Mary. Anyone else? What is Joconda smile?
The
What's that?
Gioconda is the Leonardo da Vinci's painting, the famous woman that
The
we don't know
Mona
whether she's
Lisa?
smiling or sad
Oh,
or
the
almost
Mona
emotionless.
Lisa. Is it the Mona
La
Lisa?
the Mona Lisa, yeah, Gioconda is the same. That's it.
Yeah, so it's like this kind of mystic smile, right? But yeah, I
Sí.
mean, so essentially, it's something that can shift your mind state, and apparently, it shifts a lot of other people's mind state too, because everybody wants flocks to to the museum to see that in Paris, right? um, so okay, guys, thank you all for being such a great audience and participant. Um, Mary, thank you for co-hosting this with me. I had an amazing time. If you guys want to get more and hear more from me, you can follow me on LinkedIn. You can scan this code, and there are many ways that you can engage. I also have a podcast. And then also, if you'd like to share your experience, please feel free. Oh yeah, that's the next slide. Yeah. Yeah, so you can just scan either of those. You can scan the one on the bottom left to leave a Google review. If I would really appreciate it if you could do that. Your reviews are always very welcome. And then also you can scan the top right to stay connected through LinkedIn or through my podcasts that I release on a monthly basis, sometimes bi-monthly if I'm very busy. But I want to thank each of you again for showing up, and I hope that the skills that you picked up today, the somatic skills, are something that will continue to help you to break out of patterns that are no longer working for you. And I want to remind each of you to be kind and gentle to yourself, even when you're learning these new skills, because it's hard to sometimes overcome patterns and you may fall back to them, but always pick yourself up and keep moving forward. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's it for today. Thank you all.
Thank you
Mary,
so
thank
much.
you.
Thank you all for staying. We will share the recording with everybody. Thank you, Deborah, again. It's always amazing to learn. And I can see at the beginning, I said, I'm privileged to work with such passionate and driven people. And now I can reconfirm and reaffirm that it's a privilege to be able to co host a session with somebody that's not only driven and passionate, but generous enough to gather all this knowledge and share it with us. So thank you, Deborah. And
Yeah,
everybody,
of course, my pleasure. And thank each of you for coming. All right. Well, I hope you all have a great rest of your night or day, wherever which part of the world you're in. And take care. Until next time. Bye.
bye bye.